Time for top story then. As the fighting in Syria continues, the number of refugees continues to rise rapidly as well. There are now reports of more than 12,000 Syrians seeking refuge as far afield as Algeria, and the numbers are also rising elsewhere in Turkey and in Jordan as well. Aid agencies are now estimating the total number of refugees fleeing the country has reached at least 120,000. But many suspect the number could be much higher, courtesy of Syrians staying with family and friends who have yet to register with local agencies. Well, that's the subject of top story. For that, I'm joined by International Affairs editor Annette Young. Annette, then, Jordan just opened its first UN refugee camp over the weekend. Must put an incredible strain on this tiny country.
It certainly does, because this is a small country by comparison to its neighbours. You know, its population is only about 6.5 million. By example, Syria is almost more than 23 million people. Now, Jordanian authorities are saying that roughly around 130,000 Syrians have already made their way across the border. But many of them are not classified as refugees. So the thing that you just said is that a lot of them have families or friends or business sort of colleagues who they can stay with in Amman or elsewhere across the country. But it's getting to the stage where so many are now coming over that the UNHCR had to open this camp this weekend, which at the moment is only for 10,000 but can expand to fit up to 100,000. Let's just take a listen, Stuart, to what the UNHCR rep had to say about the camp being opened.
What we've done here is attempted to mitigate some of the costs that Jordan is incurring, but we're only mitigating some of the costs. We can only expect that more people will be coming across, more people who will be in need of assistance.
Well, as you heard, you know, they can only mitigate some of the costs. The reality is the host country has to front up with things such as water, electricity, and this is a country in the desert. It's already having problems with its gas supply, courtesy of terrorist attacks on the pipeline, which have been supplying the gas to Jordan and early on to Israel. It's also not only a small population, but limited resources. But again, it's relatively stable, which is why it's attracting people. And it's not the first time that the country has faced a massive influx of refugees. Of course, you go back to the late 1960s in the wake of the 1967 war with Israel, and of course they were flooded with a mass of Palestinian refugees, and then again more recently with the Iraqi wars. And you know, both of those refugee issues actually created a series of problems. For instance, with the Iraqis, they've got something in the order of 450,000 Iraqis still in the country, many of whom are not working. And I remember when I was in Amman on a number of occasions while working as a Middle East correspondent, you would see them hanging out in malls and coffee shops, and there'd be a bit of tension between them and the local community as such.
I mean, it does seem incredible, isn't it? It's not just the neighbours of Syria as well. This news that we mentioned in the link about people actually going as far away as Algeria.
I know, it is extraordinary, and I think we've got a map here just to show the distance. I mean, Algeria, for those who are not familiar, is not next door. It's a fair way. Now, the reason that this is probably happening has been attributed to the lack of visa requirements between the two countries. Now, while the official figure is around 12,000, some are saying it could be as high as 20,000. Not only are they sort of basing themselves in Algiers, but in towns and villages across the country. Now, Syria has sought to rein in the exodus by reducing the number of weekly flights between Syria and Algeria. Passengers, for instance, now have to show return tickets, they have to show proof of who they're going to stay with in Algeria before they get on the flight. But again, it just shows you how widespread this refugee exodus is starting to be.
So presumably the international agency is very aware of all of this. I mean, what plans are they making to try and tackle it?
One would think they would have something in place, but this is the sad and hard reality, Stuart. I mean, despite the fact that the uprising has only been in existence for for nearly, 18 months now, very few plans are in place. For instance, the EU ministers had an emergency meeting in Cyprus because EU sort of met there because Cyprus is the closest EU country to Syria. It's only separated by a 170-kilometre stretch of sea. And they were talking last week about what they're going to do in repatriating Syrians who have EU nationality or third country nationals as such. But that doesn't talk about the broader problem. This is a big issue, and it's becoming a big headache for UN and other agencies as well.
Annette, thank you very much. Annette Young here from our International Affairs Desk. That was today's top story. Do stay with us here on France 24.